And the next speaker really does need no introduction at all. Chris Matheson is the MP for Chester City. He's been the MP since defeating sitting MP Stephen Mosley in 2015. And Chris increased his majority from just 96 to 9,176 at the general election in 2017, turning Chester from the third most marginal seat in the country to a safe Labour seat. His Wikipedia entry describes him as having slightly left-of-centre views, but you can't believe everything you read on Wikipedia. Chris takes a very hands-on approach to local politics. He's involved in a number of local initiatives, in particular Plastic-Free Chester, homelessness, and a very recent and high-profile intervention into hunting with dogs, which is always a contentious issue here in Cheshire. Whatever your particular political leaning, people are impressed by Chris's hard work, his diligence, and his capacity to put Chester on the map in Westminster. I'm very pleased that he's taken time out of a very high-profile debate into fracking, or public inquiry actually, rather than a debate, which is taking place today at the Town Hall, to be with us here this morning. Please welcome Chris Matheson.
Nick, thank you for that kind introduction and for hosting this. And I ought to start with an apology to Tim. Tim phoned me up last week, and I'd been a bundle of papers, and my head was elsewhere, to let me know the news that he'd be shortly be announcing his retirement as Vice Chancellor. And I confess that instead of saying, well, Tim, I'm really pleased you're finally retiring and have a great time, I gave a rather, not exactly shirty reply, but miserable reply, expressing regret at the hole that's going to leave in Chester. And Tim had to explain, well, look, I'm not going to say how old you reported you were, but you're ready to go. And I think it's perhaps a little bit churlish, but I mean, if you look at the history of Chester University, taking it from the college to what is now not just a major part of the sub-regional economy, but is firmly on the academic map. And Tim, if we look at the contribution that you have made personally to the community here in Cheshire and West Chester, I have to say I stand by my initial view that there will be a hole there that I hope you will still continue to you will still continue to play an active role, if not in the university, in the area around here. But you will hear me say that many times over the next 9 months, the outstanding contribution that you have made to growing this area. It was great to see everybody. I know so many of you anyway, and it was great to see many of you on the way in as we were having coffee. And most of you only wanted to discuss one subject. We're here to talk about the C word, that's Chester. Make me blush. The C word is Chester, but obviously the B word is the one that everyone wants to talk about. And my answer to all of your questions is simple. I haven't got a clue. I've simply no idea. You know, coming home, it's nice to go down to London. It's wonderful. It's amazing to sit in Parliament. I tell you now, thank everyone who's one of my constituents for the honour that you give me. But the best part of the week is always when that train pulls out of London Euston. Although annoyingly, I'd driven down last week. I hate driving, but I had to drive stuff up and down between the offices, and it took me 6 hours. But the best part is when you get out and you get home and you're coming back to this oasis of sanity. But of course, everyone only wants to talk about one issue. And look, cards on the table. I always thought that Brexit was an incredibly stupid idea, and nothing has changed my mind since then. And there has to be some way forward from the increasingly entrenched positions that we are finding ourselves in, and which, frankly, sometimes I confess I hold an entrenched position because of the words I've just had to say to you. That there has to be some increasing way forward, and there has to be a sense that those people who are attacking, and a couple of Conservative friends of mine have had it in particular in the last couple of weeks, who are physically attacking members of Parliament, understand that that is not the way that we do things in this country, and that if we are to find a way forward, then there has to be a little less stridency and a little more listening, and I shall have to be the first to undertake that. And I mentioned Brexit not just because everybody has talked to me about it, but because actually it is having an effect on public life, of sucking the imagination out of everything else that we are doing, and not just of dominating government policy, but of dominating everything else does. And one of the dangerous aspects that we have as a consequence of this is that people just think, well, I think we just get on with it. Just get on with it. And unfortunately, we can't just get on with it, because what one person thinks and what another person thinks is diametrically opposed, and that just feeds into the sense of division and disunity and discord that we have. And there has to be a lot more consideration about it than simply just getting on with it. But I want to pay tribute to Nick for the timeliness, therefore, of this event, because it gives us something to focus on locally that we can actually achieve. I mean, Nick taught this a black and white future. I think this is more of a there is a greyness with all the chaos at the moment about it, and anything but a black and white future. And it's a tough time out there. Yes, Brexit is sucking the political life out, but the impact of austerity and cuts to public sector, public services in particular, are there for all to see. The impact of problems on the high street are there for all to see. People complain to me about the number of homeless that we see in Chester, which is a visible illustration and a stark illustration of the challenges that we face. But we can work together to try and bring some kind of stability and confidence. I don't mean in this room, but often outside, where people who perhaps don't know as much as they do will always moan that somehow Chester doesn't do it very well, that York does it better. What about York? York does it better. What does it mean? I don't know. But there is a sense, I always feel, and I have felt since I've been doing this job, of a lack of self-confidence in Chester, that perhaps we're not maximising our own offer to ourselves, but particularly to the outside world, in whatever that means. And I've tried to drive that a little bit for the responses to that over the last couple of years. The basis on which we start here is a good one. I mean, I'm biased. I'm lucky. I live here. I grew up near here. This is home, and I'm able to have a real sense of pride in this area. But our economy is well balanced. On the periphery, we have strong, advanced manufacturing, obviously in aerospace, in automotive, in some chemicals and energy. And I know Tim on the left has been responsible for bringing all of those together. So there is high-value manufacturing and research. And again, the work that, I know we've had some difficulties with it, but the work of the Energy Research Centre at Thornton has actually helped to bring a real cluster of expertise to this area, which we need to support. Chester is also one of the national centres for the finance sector, for financial services. MBNA is about to make, I don't know if they have done an announcement, which again is extremely positive. And obviously, in addition to the university, and Tim has talked here about about the economic strength of the university, we also, of course, have leisure and tourism and hospitality. So the balance is good, the mix is good. We're not too reliant on one sector or another, and each feeds into those. And that is a core strength of the foundation of our economic offering. But Tim, again, referring to what he just said, one of the real challenges is keeping graduates when they leave university, not just because the right jobs have to be here, but because it's affordable. This area has to be affordable. It has to be attractive in that age within the 20s, when you want somewhere that's vibrant, perhaps before you're settling down, and want somewhere a little quieter and more peaceful when you get to my age, for example. So there has to be the right business provision, and there has to be the right social provision as well. And again, the Riverside Innovation Centre, that Phil and that looks after, and others, is an outstanding example of ways that we can incubate new businesses. But it's oversubscribed, and we might need to look at how we can offer more on that. There remains problems with infrastructure. I mean, those pesky Romans, when they built Chester, didn't give us a very good road system for the 21st century, did they? And in fact, we only have 1.5. Everything is focused around the river, around the city centre. We have 1.5 crossings over the river, and if you want to get from Blacon to Saltney, the best way is through the city centre, and obviously that just focuses all the traffic. We've been working to try and get some kind of cycling strategy, but the physical size of the road system that we have makes that equally challenging, because there isn't actually that much space on which to put more roads, and building roads itself isn't always an answer. We're working with the Welsh Assembly Government on the long hoped for crossing the Western Bypass, and Ken Skates, who is the I think he's now actually the Cabinet Minister in the Welsh Assembly Government for North Wales, as well as for economic development, has found some money to look into the feasibility study, at least, to look at the correct routes for that. So there has been some progress, and we're hoping to see a report on that feasibility study in the next 6 to 9 months. And I'll come back onto that issue about North Wales in a moment. A lot of the businesses tell me that we need much more reliable and faster services to and from Manchester. A lot of young people will live in Manchester but want to work in Chester, and these train services are still utterly woeful. We're hoping that when with the development of the new franchise, that there will be longer trains, more of them. But I'd still like to think that electrification will give us a greater reliability in service, as well as a faster service. There was when Transport for Wales took over what was the Arriva Trains Wales contract. Straight away, a lot of trains were actual physical sets were taken out of service, and Transport for Wales were criticised, not least by me and a couple of the other MPs around, but it was suggested that basically they'd taken all the decent trains and sent them down to Cardiff because that's where the political pressure was. My understanding is that's not true, that actually the sets, the actual train sets that they had been run down and were in such bad state of repair that they simply weren't able to be used, and that's perhaps a criticism of one of the previous franchise holders. But it does show that there are real business challenges in providing this transport. Here's me saying I'd like electrification. That's going to cost a lot of money. We need to buy new trains. We've got a new franchise, but the new sets actually will not be ready to be ordered for a couple of years yet, and it's juggling all the different pressures to find the right resources that we have. I've also been working on the environment. We all know that Chester is a beautiful place to live. When I talk to colleagues, they all say, "What a beautiful constituency you have! What a lovely constituency! Oh, I'll go. Went to spend a week then there. Went there for a weekend with my wife and my husband." Everyone knows Chester to be a beautiful place. We have already got that reputation, reputation for it. There is. We do have issues in some parts of the city over air pollution, surprisingly, and again, part of that is due to the difficulties that we have with traffic, and there is some to do with the industries on the edge of it, but a lot of it's to do with traffic and traffic congestion. I was dealing with an issue of raw sewage discharge into the River Dee, excuse me, which was brought to my attention by somebody who was actually swimming in the river at the time, and then helpfully sent a social media film of this. Obviously, look, I'm not a drainage engineer, but it did seem pretty awful to me. And to be fair to Welsh Water, they were extremely responsive. One of the problems we have is that our sewage system, again, our sewage system in Chester is far too old and can't cope when there is a sudden downpour. then there are other aspects. For example, the more houses we build and the more roads we build, the less chance there is for water to run into the ground, so it flows off, and then it flows off into the sewers. They become over capacity, and that opens sluice gates, and they have to automatically wash raw sewage into the River Dee. The problem is, if we sorted it in, and I put pressure on them to try and build some new sewage capacity, which they're going to do, but even there, the problem isn't just Chester. This happens all the way down to Llangollen, in the River Dee. So I know that Surfers Against Sewage and others have been working with Welsh Water to try and overcome some of these problems, and there is now an investment strategy in place to build sufficient capacity so that this will no longer be necessary. That's the good news. The bad news is it's over 25 years, I think. But it's better than the 35 years that they'd originally planned for. I just hope that when we're trying to sell this city and encourage people to walk along the river, get an ice cream down by the groves, that they enjoy the ice cream and not, well, you know what I was going to say. As Nick's talked about, I've just been over at the inquiry next door into fracking, and we'll see how that goes. Our tourism offer, I think, is much stronger than we imagine. I suspect one of the problems is that we don't link it up. We don't offer Chester as one single destination with many different offers. We're standing, obviously, in the colossal success that is Story House. Good to see Geoffrey. Congratulations. I know you were part of that. And if I can say that the political support of all parties coming together on a non-political basis, Lynn, to work together and take the politics out has been a real success of this. And I will never, as happened to be the sitting MP when this opened, say that and I delivered Northgate, because I didn't. It was a cross-party, non-political achievement that is to be welcomed, and this is used as I hope as an anchor to develop the rest of the Northgate development. Now there have been discussions and debates, and rightly so, about Northgate, but I hope that as we progress, we are back on the right track again of using this as a regeneration for the whole of Chester's offer, which will include leisure as well and residential offerings. And the market next door, the market went through a terrible time, and a lot of the market traders were really down and out. It has been transformed. It's been transformed by various different reasons. I claim a little bit of credit, but only a little bit, because I put out a video encouraging everybody to go. Most of the comments were that it was worse than Alan Partridge, but at least it got people talking about the market. That's why I'm an MP and not a television presenter. But the market traders themselves have worked really hard, and new traders have taken a chance. They've taken a chance and put the work in. And it has been the market itself has really benefited from that enterprising energy and zeal that they've put into that. And now I think they've had 1 million visitors footfall this year. It is outstanding, and to everyone that has helped in that turnaround, I congratulate them. We probably need more hotels, but if there's any hoteliers out there that fancy investment, come on down. We will work with you. And as a historic city, the costs of maintaining that history are considerable. There's a wall that's partly collapsed towards the other end of the edge of the immediate city. There's a question about who is responsible. That's the third historic collapse where there is a dispute over who has to pay for it. And obviously when you're in tough times and public sector budgets are cut, then everyone hunkers down in their silos, and instead of actually getting the work done, the question becomes a bean feast for lawyers as they discuss who's going to pay rather than getting the job done and sorting it out afterwards. But the walls are now largely open. We've got the problem with what to do with D House and the amphitheatre. I'll let you into a little secret. If it had been down to me, I would have just let it D House fall down. But the fact is, the people who know more about these things than me say that this is a place of historic importance. And of course, I can't remember whether it's English Heritage or Historic England. Whoever holds the title in, I think it's Historic England. I've got a preservation order on it anyway. So there has to be a way forward to find a solution so that we can get D House and the amphitheatre area back into regeneration as well. And the zoo has had another fantastic year in terms of visitors. I don't know if Jamie's still here, but he is. And obviously, at the end of the year, we had the disaster of part of the Islands project being damaged by fire. And the public response to that, the public response locally, and businesses locally that queued up to call Jamie and say, how can we help? Can we give money? Can we give support in kind? The national public response to support the zoo, and as I say, nationally, and the number of MPs who called me to find out what they could do, including the Minister, Michael Ellis, who I have a lot of time for, to call me, it shows just how important Chester is in the national consciousness. And while you're here, Jamie, I don't wish to embarrass you. Jamie's responsible for the business side of the zoo. Visitors, visitor numbers, making sure that the commercial activities work well. But when on a Saturday afternoon in the middle of December you get a crisis of that magnitude, and you're the one on the spot, and you're the one that is the one under the spotlight and under the pressure, that's when we see the kind of character that you are, and that's when we see the kind of leader that you are. And I don't think anyone can ever say that you didn't do anything other than rise to the challenge and provide true leadership. And I congratulate you on that. We've talked about bringing the castle back in. It's a step-by-step process. It's very frustrating. There are 3 or 4 different owners of Chester Castle. English Heritage, the Crown Estates. There's obviously old Cheshire West and Chester Council owns part of it. There's even some small patch of land that was never properly transferred over, and I think still owned by Cheshire County Council, even though it doesn't exist. That's how chaotic it is. But we've worked to try and bring it in step by step, and there are still sites there that we think we can use for to improve the offer of the whole area. But again, it's regenerating slowly as we can, as we are given permission to. But it's bit by bit. The high street remains a real problem, and of course it's a problem nationally. We know about the consideration that the government is giving to reforming business rates, and not just to money that is being given by the government to support the keeping business rates low, but also how the system itself might be reformed. But one problem that we do have is that there are landlords nationally for whom it is more profitable to keep properties empty but maintain on their balance sheet the nominal value of the rental income, rather than accepting that rents nationally are falling and therefore to accept a lower rent, because that has a negative effect on their balance sheet and the amount they can leverage off there. And I think there has to be nationally a real sense from property owners and landlords agents that rents in the high street are falling, and that there has to be some kind of readjustment if we are to keep our high streets alive. A few months ago now, probably 9 months ago now, Channel 4 announced that they were going to move out of London and they were looking to resite their headquarters. And we thought we'd have a go at it. Bit of a cheeky bid. But Sam Dixon and I went down to London to hear what they had to say, and of course, Hollyoaks and the Secret Life of the Zoo are both filmed here, and I made that absolutely clear. We've already got those strong links. But the more we looked at what Chester had to offer to a high-profile body like Channel 4, and the more we thought, well, why not? why not us? And sitting next to us was my colleague Ian Lucas from Wrexham, and Maria Hinflower was there from Glendower University. And we thought we would enhance perhaps our offer if we did a joint bid for Chester and North Wales. Now, we didn't actually. I thought in the end we put a really solid bid in that challenged Channel 4 on their own idea of representing the whole country, and challenged them on what they thought of about diversity. It wasn't just urban. It wasn't perhaps just about gender or ethnicity or about sexuality. We were saying, look, it's also town versus city. It's also rural versus urban. And if we're going to reflect the whole of the UK, then that perhaps this is a place to come to. We didn't get to the first assessment because we weren't big enough. Simply they wanted a particular population size. But the work that the two boroughs put in together as a joint bid, I think put us in really good stead for taking forward that idea that the border that we have and the border that sits somewhere just the other side of Pulford is only a line on a map, and that Chester's hinterland, as well as going into Ellesmere Port and up the Wirral, as well as going past Frodsham and Helsby into the areas where I grew up, should also go right across North Wales. And Ian and I have sat down recently and talked about how we can improve cross-border cultural contacts, sporting contacts, kind of things that perhaps don't need necessarily the agreement of two councils or two different administrations. And that's something we're very keen to take forward, to realise that Chester's sphere of influence is a circle around and not a semicircle with a flat line that is a border down there. And the more that we can overcome that and bring those two areas together, the stronger it would be. If we're looking for the answers to what Chester needs to do, and this isn't me trying to ingratiate myself with you, if we're looking for the answers, I'd suggest you don't need to look very far. Look in this room. People like Nick, Nick was a former president of the business club who has consistently brought people together. Andy, who's brought, where was Andy still? Was he still around? Andy Foster, who again has continually brought people together through events such as murmurations. The answers are in this room. The answers are in this people, the people in this room and beyond, who care about this city and who are creative enough and imaginative enough to make this forward. And so I'll give you one example. I've been working with independent restaurant workers, restaurant owners who feel that they're not able to market and push themselves as much as some of the big national chains, and are getting squeezed out of Chester and losing that independent edge. I told you also that I've been working with market traders to try and get people back into the market. So Richard Beecham and I, Councillor Beecham and I, were sitting down, how can we do something more about this? And Rich got in touch with the Chester Good for Nothing group, and I know there's people here. These are people who work in design, work in marketing, work in PR, and give their time up for free once a month to work on a project. And they sat down and came up with this solution of what we call Chester Hunger Games. And there's now an app, or it might be a website, where you go on here. We've given it a soft launch so far. It started off in the market with the food outlets in the market. It's going to go wider across Chester. And together we came up with an app where you go on the app, you spin the wheel, and it tells you to go to one of the Alexander's, for example, and Alexander's will give a special offer if you come along with this app. And we're hoping to drive visitor custom as well as domestic residential custom to our independents. And that answer that was a solution, a local solution to a local problem that came up with local people. And I see my job very much as providing that platform for local people to come together to use our own ingenuity. Well, your own ingenuity, I can't claim it myself. Your own ingenuity your own imagination, your own creativity to drive forward local economic success here. We've got a lot going for ourselves. We've got a great national profile. Sometimes I think we should just have a little bit more confidence, not only in the beauty and attractiveness of our city, but in the capability and imagination of our people. Thank you.